Welcome, welcome. This is a pretty big show. There were two pretty big events that have happened for Florida State this past weekend. So there was the first fall scrimmage, where Florida State players kind of got the closest thing to game action they've had since the spring game. And there was a commitment by a four-star running back, which is, an area of concern in recruiting for a lot of fans, but the production on the field has been good. So a lot of things to talk about. We'll have a few guests coming in and out. And so how are you doing, Coach AB?
I am good. Back at home, got back from Tally. Wasn't actually in Tally, but was pretending to be in Tallahassee with my green screen. Had enough of that damn thing, and yeah. So got the old bookshelf behind me here, the shelving. Ready to roll. Was pretty excited to get a commitment from Sam Singleton. Anxious to talk to Zach about that because I don't know. I feel like there's a lot going on there. So excited to talk to Zach about that here in a little bit, and then obviously excited to talk about the scrimmage. I know Brendan's got a lot of stuff that he put up on Knowles 24/7. Be sure if you're not a subscriber to get over there. I think the 60% off deal is over, but it doesn't matter. Get in there, show some love. Brendan had the scrimmage scoop. Zach's obviously already starting to work on Duquesne game officials. He dropped a big one today of a young man that's going to be coming in to visit. It's not an official visit. It's an unofficial visit, but a huge prospect in the 2024 class. Little tease there. So if you want to join up, go check that out. Please be sure to do so. And also be sure to check us out tomorrow. We are going to be on the On the Bench Pod Network. It's the On the Bench through Knowles 24/7. Wherever you get your pods, get on there, get subbed. X's and Knowles is going to be on there. So, if you want to listen to us twice after being in here in the live, make sure you get in there and subscribe to it.
Yeah, if you hopped in halfway through and want to catch the rest, it will be on YouTube, on the Knowles 247 YouTube channel, or on the Bench Network podcast. So as much as we like talking about where you can find us, I think we want to talk more about recruiting. So let's bring on kind of our resident recruiting expert, Zach. How's it going, man?
It's going well. How are you guys?
Doing well.
Zach,
it was nice having AB in Tallahassee for a minute, but now he's back in Delaware. So, So you've been around the recruiting scene. Tell us about Sam Singleton.
Yeah, so Sam Singleton, Florida State landed his commitment. I believe it was on Saturday, right? Yesterday, or is it 2 days ago? I don't know. I'm losing track of time. But Florida State landed
lots going on.
Yeah, Florida State landed his commitment. He's a 4-star running back, according to the 24/7 Sports composite. He is out of Orange Park, Fleming Island High School, over there near the Jacksonville area. Sits at 5'11", 180 pounds. And he picked FSU over other options like Penn State. He's had previous offers from LSU, Miami, Kentucky, Michigan State, Michigan, and over a dozen others. So, it was pretty noteworthy, right? Like this Florida State really hasn't recruited, or I should say landed, a blue chip running back out of the high school ranks in quite some time. I think I think it was Carter at the Democrat, put up a stat saying that this would be Florida State's first blue chip. If Sam Singleton did end up signing with FSU down the line, that it would be their first blue chip addition at the position through the high school ranks since like 2018, I believe. That's pretty crazy considering, what Florida State does at running back historically and what Mike Norvell does at the position, or what he has done with guys at that position throughout his career, even at Memphis, and early in his career at FSU. I mean, Jayshon Corbin is a guy that has some NFL interest, and we've seen some great things out of a former walk-on like Trayshawn Ward. So it was a good addition. I think we can break down the film even more and kind of get your guys' thoughts on it, because I think that's really what people want to see. But yeah, in my opinion, it was a good addition. I think he's got legit speed. 10.86 is what he went in the 100. I believe that was in 2020. I watched him at FSU Relays. It's a track meet that FSU hosts for high school and college athletes every year. I believe that was back in March. He didn't run it. He didn't run like PR. He didn't run 10.86, but I think he ran below 11 still. So he's a fast kid. I mean, you can see it on his tape. Like that's what stands out the most, right?
Yeah. His wheels stand out. I mean, it's what his tape ends up being all about, in my opinion. I think the balance is there. You're going to see, I mean, it's a pretty nifty play there. He kind of gets taken out by the turf monster and then keeps himself upright and then manages to pull away. I think there's a little bit left to be desired out of this tape. All in all, I like the take. I don't know if he's as good as he's ranked. There's a nice little jump cut in the hole. We talk about some balance there. That's something like a Dalvin Cook was known for, was his ability to just make a move full speed in the hole because he was so balanced. He stays within his shoulder pads and is able to just kind of be up over his knees and just runs real smooth. I'm not comparing this young man to Dalvin Cook at all, but
sounds like you're comparing him to Dalvin Cook at all.
Especially Dalvin Cook in your book.
So AB says that this kid's as good as Dalvin Cook. Put that. Let's write that down.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It's really the speed that you see. It's the striding ability. I think for me the big question marks come in. How does he do when he doesn't have a massive hole to run through? So all of his highlight tapes, which this one's kind of breaking up, but everything you see on highlight film, he's generally not getting touched. He's just running free. I don't know how that speaks to the level of competition he's playing, but when he's got open grass in front of him, he looks like a playmaker. He looks like someone that, I mean, worst case scenario, you can put returning kicks and it can be a pretty dynamic player in that area. But yeah, I think we're kind of missing that film to see how does he handle a kind of congested box. How does he do when he's not out in space, and maybe he's more of a guy that they more project to being more of a Toa Philly type role, more in that tailback where they can kind of place him out wide, make a one cut route runner, and then put him in the box to kind of run some outside zone and kind of just try to free him up. And I mean, here he is running through some tackles. So
but again, it was an interior. It looked like inside zone, and then he bounces it outside, which is going to happen from time to time. But in the college game, that doesn't tend to work because those guys can run with you. It's actually some sort of power play almost.
Yeah.
So he's bouncing this outside. It does look clogged up inside. I'm not saying that that's on him, that he should try to stick his nose up in there, but that doesn't tend to work as well at the collegiate level.
Where you're just seeing none of it on the tape at all, right?
Yeah,
you're not seeing him run through the interior of the defense really much at all on this tape. So something that's yet to be seen.
So, his vision concerns me a little bit. I'd like to be able to see some, I'd like to be able to see some of that on his tape. I'd also like to see from him,
that was nice.
Just an ability to run inside a little bit more. Here it is again. He bounces it. He trusts his speed, which is great because it's there. But in the college level, you're going to have to run inside. You're going to have to hit these holes, and I think there's a nice little stiff arm. In the college game, he's going to have to find a way to trust up inside and to stick his nose in there. But look, we've talked all season about Mike Norvell and Alex Atkins wanting to be an outside zone team. He does translate to that type of scheme. You want to get this kid on a stretch zone or an outside zone, I think he's going to have success there. So for what they want to be as an offense, and the things that I think that they want to do, it's a natural fit. It kind of felt like low hanging fruit, though. I mean, what other big time schools in the Southeast were on him, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, the only one you can really point to is Penn State. They were the last school to host him on a visit. It was an unofficial at the end of July. He visited there with his little brother, who's a 2025 prospect at the same school. I believe he's a DB, and then a few of his teammates. So I don't know. I haven't talked to the Penn State insiders on our network and kind of figured out where he stood on their board. But if I had to guess, I don't think he was like their top option because if we know Jawan Sider, the running backs coach over there,
Yeah.
he pretty much lands who he wants, especially in the state of Florida.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I
agree,
honestly I don't know who's FSU's biggest competition. FSU is the only school to host him on an official visit throughout his recruitment. That happened in June, that final weekend of June. It was pretty clear they wanted to lock him up. So,
Yeah.
I kind of agree with you, AB. I think maybe, I think his ranking probably is around a low, in my book, it would be like a low 4-star, high 3-star kind of guy. You love the potential of his verified track speed, right? Like that
Right.
usually translates well.
Yeah.
And you can kind of see on his tape, like Brendan noted this, and I kind of agree with it. Like he kind of runs like a sprinter, like very upright, and that that's not something you really like to see out of a running back
No.
typically. So that's something that you can fix up technique wise at the next level, and I think to give David Johnson credit, like I think he does a good job at that in coaching the guys or his guys in that room. Like I think he's done a great job of getting Trey Benson kind of acclimated into what they want to do on offense so far. And we've seen the running back success already. Like I mentioned at FSU under Norvell. So, I'm not doubting them there, but I agree. I think, there weren't a ton of other suitors for him or legitimate suitors. So maybe you can consider it low hanging fruit. I still think it's a nice addition. It's probably one of the better high school additions that they've had at the running back position throughout Norvell's tenure.
Yeah. Which maybe that's a problem. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree.
But no, I agree. It is a good take. He's a good get. I mean, it's not one of those players that we should feel bad about having in the class. And it's not one of those guys that we're sitting here saying, "Oh, he's underrated. He's underrated." No, I mean he's got some legitimate traits that you can point to and be happy about. Who was the lead on his recruitment?
I mean, the lead was in our book was David Johnson. He's the guy that ran point as far as contact, but there were other people. John Papuchis is the area recruiter in Jacksonville.
Okay.
So he was involved there. Obviously, we know JP does a great job.
Yeah.
And there were a few off the field guys. I think Keywan Ratliff was involved. He was someone that spent a lot of time with him on his official at the end of June. And I'm sure there are a few others, but JP and Yak were the two main on-field guys that were involved.
Do we think they're going to go anywhere else at running back? Are they looking at any other guys? I know, you've got a little bit of youth in that room, but you've got to be trying to fill it out here. Are they going to look for another running back, or is Singleton going to be it?
They're definitely going for two. I was told that a few months ago by a good source that they're looking for two in this class. That's their clear goal. They would have liked to have Dalen Smothers paired with Sam Singleton, but Smothers opted to go to OU, Oklahoma. So where they turn from here, there's a few options. Michael Mitchell is a guy that they're evaluating still. He was up at Seminole Showcase. He's committed to Utah right now. And I think if FSU were to offer, it wouldn't take long for him to flip his commitment to FSU. He grew up a huge fan. The thing with him is he's got some off the field stuff to work on. I think grades are an issue. So if he gets that sorted out, I could see him being a possible addition as that second running back in this class. Besides that, I mean, there's a few others that they're in on. I wouldn't consider them a legit player for a guy like Christopher Johnson out of Fort Lauderdale Dillard down in South Florida. Really speedy. I think he ran 10.4 in the 100, which is crazy speed. And he's really good. So it sounds like Ole Miss and maybe Miami and Clemson are the top three there. FSU tried to get him on campus at the end of July. They weren't able to. He went to Ole Miss that weekend. So if they want to get in that, they're obviously going to have to host him on campus this season, which is kind of hard for those South Florida kids that play on a Friday night and then have to, make the trek up to Tallahassee the next day for a game. Besides that, I mean, there's more options on the table, but the guys that I mentioned are probably the most likely. And we've seen at that position, they're not scared to go portal, right? Sean Corbin was an addition through the portal. Trey Benson, who seems like he's going to be running back 1 or 2 for them this season, was an addition through the portal. So they're definitely not scared to do that. That could certainly be an option. Maybe if they don't have any guys that they feel like they should take through the high school ranks when it comes down to it in December, February, I think the portal is definitely an option as well.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of criticism of our breakdown in the chat here. I think it's fair to address. Shannon Scott's, I think, disappointed with us that we didn't have a lot of positive to say. I don't know if there's a lot of positive to say about that. I mean, I thought that we were very honest about his speed. Beyond that, I'm not sure he's a natural running back at this point. I think there's a lot of coaching that needs to get done to get him prepared for the college game. Well, it's nice to have you in the chat, his mom.
Look, here's how I feel. I think it's a great take. I think that you're excited to bring in someone with his natural talent at running back. He's clearly got speed. Trey Benson's an upright runner. That was a concern of his for people watching his tape when he was first taken. Trey Benson is developing to be what looks like a really, really dynamic and very good running back for Florida State this next season. So I think that's what they see in Sam, and I think there's a ceiling there that's really high. And when you've got that track speed, you got to be excited about that, right? There's a potential there that he needs to reach. We're just trying to point out that there's some holes in his tape that we're just not seeing. Not necessarily that he doesn't have that or he can't develop that, just that right now, that's the reason why, he's not a 5-star prospect, right? Yeah. He's not the top running back in the country right now. There's some pros and cons to every player's game, and that's why we're here to talk about it.
I think if you go back to his sophomore film, you see some of that. So that's why it becomes a concern to me is where did it go away in his junior film, and then he's obviously got his senior year ahead of him to put that back on tape. So it's a catch-22. We're obviously watching a 5-minute clip of him. Maybe he left those plays off of his highlight tape. You never know. So we're just going to try to be honest with what we see in front of us. We're obviously not trying to down the young man because he's worked hard to get where he is. And obviously to earn a Florida State offer is a big time deal. We just want to try to be honest. And I want to try to be honest with the folks that are in here listening to us break down this young man's film, that it's not all sunshine and roses, but it's also not bad. There's just things that I feel like he's got to work on. I think he's got to prove on his senior highlight tape to maybe take that next step in his ranking or whatever. I think he's a big time prospect as far as his speed goes. I think he's a home run hitter. I think he fits the outside zone scheme that they want to be running here. I think some of the other things he's got to work on.
Yeah. So I think that if Zach wants to stick around, he can, but I think we're going to move on to the scrimmage and
same to you, Shannon.
See kind of how the current Florida State players are faring. So we're going to bring on Brendan. Zach, you're certainly invited to stay along and kind of talk about this next season and kind of what we're expecting to see based off of what we've heard from this past Saturday. So welcome, Brendan.
Hello. Thank you for having me, gentlemen. Zach, you sound awful. Are you doing okay?
Yeah, it's the congestion, but I'm doing all right. I'm doing better.
All right. Well, good. I'm glad you're doing a little bit better. Thanks for having me, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
welcome. We stirring the pot with parents right now. Is that what's happening? Did I miss that?
That's how it's.
I've never hated on any stars. I promise you that.
I think it's a solid take for Florida State.
Yeah, I agree.
There's pros and cons to every player. I think it's a big senior season coming up. So yeah, we'll see. But a position need for sure. Can't teach speed. Hopefully some of the other elements of the game come around, but there's certainly something there. So yeah, let's keep it rolling, I guess.
Brendan's got fans that are just trailing him throughout.
What up? So. Yeah, I was doing a little podcast action elsewhere, trying to get a sponsorship for On the Bench. I don't know if I succeeded, but maybe X's and O's will have more success. We'll see.
Well, we brought you on because we know that you're not sharing information with them that you're going to share with us, because all the people in the chat right now are privileged people that have decided to join the Knowles 247 the On the Bench podcast feed here. So what have you heard from the scrimmage? What are some pros? Start us off there.
Some pros. So the defense. So every time we talk about practice or scrimmage, there's one side does something well, that usually means another side did something poorly, or at least not as well. The defense was dominant from what we understand. It sounded like that after talking to the coaches, on record during the post scrimmage media availability, but in talking to sources afterwards, it sounds like, especially the first team offense versus the first team defense. There's some injuries, some limitations on both sides of the ball, but really with the offensive line, it made for a day where the first team defense was able to kind of fly around, be physical, win at the point of attack, and make life difficult for the first team offense. I think they settled in a little bit there, but the offense did, but generally the defense, from what we heard, did really well, which, hey, this is the first scrimmage. That's kind of what you expect. That's probably what it should be. Specifically, we heard that the linebackers played really well. The coaches highlighted Tayden Bethune. It sounded like he played really well. But in addition to him, Kalen DeLoach, DJ Lundy, those are three linebackers who continue to either have their names called out, guys that we notice, observe in practice. They've all put in really good preseason camps to kind of round out the what you would hope would be a solid three-man rotation there. The defensive backs sounded like they did well, the potential starters. They have Duke Cooper on one side, but the other starting spot is up for grabs, and it sounds like Greedy Vance, Renardo Green are two players who impressed during the scrimmage. And one other name I'll throw out there, kind of a wild card, maybe a little bit of a surprise given where he was the last couple of years, but someone who hasn't given up on things yet. It's Jerry and Jones. He was at nickel in the scrimmage, and it sounds like he did a really nice job defending the slot, and someone that I think has a legitimate chance to push for a starting spot this season now that he's healthy and feeling good. So yeah, defense dominant. Offense did well. We heard the run game was something that was kind to the offense as things got settled in a little bit. Cherry Benson, Trayshawn Ward are two names that emerged potentially, and then also I almost said Rodney Hill as well. I'm going to do that all season. I know it. I've done that like 3 or 4 times already. But Rodney Hill is someone who got some reps with the older players, 1s and 2s, and I think he held his own, and that's encouraging from a depth perspective. So yeah, those are the pros I would say coming out of the scrimmage.
Okay, well that's kind of good to hear, because I think that's let's start on defense. I think that the first thing you mentioned was linebacker, and I've been pretty vocal on the X's and Knowles channel, the videos that I kind of write and produce myself. That the linebackers last year were probably the biggest issue with the defense, and probably the limiting factor to the overall defensive statistics or performance or whatever. So yeah, how do you feel the rotation is going to go? What are some other things that you're hearing about that linebacking crew? We've been really high about Tayden Bethune, but it's good to hear that it sounds like he's doing well in the scrimmages.
Kev, let's talk about your man crush, DJ Lundy, right?
I'm very excited about DJ Lundy, right? So I was so down on DJ Lundy last season. Like I saw him in on third down, and I would, start fuming. So all these things I hear about DJ Lundy, what's going on with him?
He was a legitimate liability in space last season. To your point, he was 255 pounds. And as solid as he was as a run stopper, someone who, it was really cool. Like when he diagnosed the play, triggered uphill and saw like, hey, it's inside run coming, and he was able to stick his nose in there, like the pile stopped. Like he was a pile stopper. And I don't know the last time we saw that at Florida State. The downside was like when plays ran to the perimeter, you've highlighted that well on some of your solo vids, Kev. He was a liability. So with that in mind, he was at 255 pounds last season. Someone who struggled with conditioning, just huffing and puffing a lot of the time, trying to catch his breath when we'd be at practice. He's down to 236 pounds listed. So he's lost almost 20 pounds in the offseason. And sometimes the weights, like I feel like you can be a little liberal with them and just how much like of a change there actually was in the offseason. But with DJ Lundy, like he legitimately looks like a different player. It does not look like DJ Lundy when he has the helmet and pads on. Like it'd be tough to recognize him compared to what he was last year. He's thinned out. He is moving much better. We saw a little bit of that in the spring. It was kind of cool, like with the weight loss too. Like they said, hey, let's just lose a little bit of weight initially and see how that works with you, how that works with your game. I think Randy Shannon said he lost about 5 to 10 pounds in the spring, and he was moving more comfortably. We saw him downfield a little bit more often, saw him being able to get out to the perimeter a little more comfortably. They said, all right, like the way this looks, let's see if we can kind of continue to move in this direction. So completely transforms his body, 20 pounds lighter in the offseason. In camp, you're really starting to see it. I mean, he's someone who explodes at times to the perimeter, gets out there quickly. I'm curious to see how that translates to games. Like, right? It could be tough to tell sometimes in practice when you kind of have an idea of what the other team's running or what your own team is running because you're going against the offense so often. But he does trigger very quickly. He's getting out to the perimeter. He's not someone who that FSU's first and second team are able to consistently like turn the corner on a lot. And we also see him downfield and coverage a lot more and a lot more comfortably. With that in mind, I think he is going to be part of the rotation with Kalen DeLoach, who moved in a pretty positive direction last season, especially in the back half of last year. Yeah. So those guys are two improvements moving in the right direction. You mentioned Tayden Bethune. Like, he's just super knowledgeable, very consistent. Yeah, I don't know if he's going to be an all-conference caliber player, but I do know that he's going to be reliable. I think that's a pretty safe bet at this point. So you have 3 guys who you trust. Last year, you had one in Kalen DeLoach, and even that took half a season. So, yeah, linebackers, those 3 are going to rotate around. I think be your main 3, kind of figure out how to use them different times in the span of a game. And then you have Amari Gaynor you can use situationally. There is value to using him in certain packages and against certain teams. And then you try to see if maybe Brendan Gant, Omar Graham can be guys who you find in different sub packages as well.
I think that's an exciting development. I think the better the linebacker crew is, the higher I feel about this defense. We're talking about a defense that should be a top 25 defense in my opinion. And if these guys play out, the ceiling could potentially be higher. And if it's not, I think there's some serious questions that need to be asked. So the other big question I think that a lot of us have, you briefly addressed, which is corner depth. So you're saying that there's some sort of position battle at the corner position. So
yeah.
I guess the surprising thing is Jarian Jones is a name that you've specifically mentioned on the site. Zach's got some opinions on Jarian Jones.
Zach looks surprised. Well, hey, I wish Chris Nee were here, because Zach, tell them, like, last spring, you and I were seeing something where Chris was traveling covering baseball right? Or was it baseball? He wasn't there.
Basketball, maybe.
Basketball. Chris wasn't there in the spring. So explain to them like what that dynamic was. We were trying to convince them of something.
Was it? You're talking about Jarian?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we thought Jarian was having a really good spring, which he was. Like, the coaches will even admit that. And Chris wouldn't have it. He didn't believe it, just because of past history of Jarian doing well in camp and then things going otherwise on the field. But he legitimately had a good spring, and Chris was not having it.
Chris is very much so a need to see it to believe it human being. I guess we all are to an extent. Oh, we lost Zach. That's all right.
He just dropped that bomb and left.
He did. He said Chris Nee sucks. He can't analyze anyone. He's awful, and he just got out of here. Okay, he's back. But so Jarian did have an improved spring 2 years ago, and then he had a hand injury, and we saw him with the hand injury in camp. But more details have come out now, and Jarian's talked about this. He wasn't able to do any physical activity for 3 to 4 months. Like, the doctor said, you can't sweat. If this gets infected, that would be an issue. So there was like no like legit workouts. And then all of a sudden he's playing against Notre Dame. So think about like that, to go from having, and he just looked so unathletic last year. And you're wondering like what happened from the spring into the season. And it's a hand injury. I understand like that can impact physicality and stuff, but like, why is he not fluid? Why is he not moving the way we saw him in the spring? And now it all makes sense. Jarian Jones was not good last season. Like, the numbers show as much. His passer rating allowed, I think, was 150 NFL passer rating. That's not great. It was someone who was inevitably like benched by Amarian Cooper, who played really well, but he was benched in favor of a freshman. And now and then in the spring, like, I wasn't sure if Jarian was going to put it together. he's had a really good preseason camp. It's been consistent. It hasn't been just like one day of flashing and then kind of disappearing for a few days. No, he's been really good in one-on-ones. He's hasn't been picked on at all in team stuff. And then Zach, it sounded like he was pretty good in the scrimmage yesterday.
Yeah, I spoke to some people in attendance at the scrimmage, and they said he played really well at nickel. Which is a position they're testing him at, and it seems like he's excelling at early on in camp. So that was encouraging to hear. He looked. I mean, you've noted it on your practice reports, Brendan. He's looked good throughout camp. When I was there that first week, and then even in those past couple days before the scrimmage, while I was away, he stood out. So it's a good sign, I think. Hopefully he carries that on for the rest of camp and then into the season, because that's truly been the struggle, is the consistency. You hear Mike Norvell talk about it. You hear Marcus Woodson talk about it. It's getting Jarian Jones to be consistent every play, handling his technique, because I think that's kind of the thing that he lacks on a little bit, is staying consistent with his technique at the position. So if he can do that, man, it'd be really beneficial for the secondary as they try and work around some guys at different spots. It'd be nice to have another solid guy in that first or second rotation that they can count on.
Well, yeah. I know immediately what everybody's saying is, oh my God, Jarian Jones is going to play. How in the hell is this possible? Why are we back here? We don't trust him. All these things it's already in the chat. It's all over Twitter. It's on every Discord out there right now, I'm sure. I mean, look, if he goes and beats out Kevin Knowles, who, I mean, yes, Kevin Knowles is a true sophomore, but I mean, that's a young man that we know works his tail off.
Yeah.
If he goes and beats him out, you have to kind of tip your cap to him and say, look, I mean, he won the job. That's got to stand for something. If he wins the job, he deserves to be out there. If he goes out there and wets the bed, then, you go back to Knowles. But if he wins the job, you can't send him on the bench. You can't leave him over on the side, because it sends the wrong message from a team aspect. You ask these guys to do all these things. If he goes out there and does everything you've asked of him, whether that be in the nickel or whether that be on the outside, and he wins the job, then you play him, you go from there, and you hopefully have two solid nickel backs that you can run out there every game.
And can I talk just briefly about why he? Okay, so I'm going to talk about this.
Only if you sing it or you explain it like a Nickelback song.
Yeah, and I can't do that. I can't do that. I sing too well.
Okay, that's the problem. Gotcha.
So yeah, there's a huge difference between an outside corner position and a nickelback. And it's something that I think a lot of people are missing. Just because you're not a good outside corner doesn't mean you can't handle nickelback. So nickelback is a Sam backer that I have here. For some reason, I'm not able to draw right now, but basically this guy's job is more to move laterally. And I think that's something we've seen as a strength of his is handling the kind of underneath routes, moving laterally. Where he really got burned last season was in the cover 4 scheme that Fuller likes to run. A lot of times these corners are having to be one-on-one in space on deep routes with receivers. And I think he was getting burned with his really long speed. And so him thriving at Sam or at the nickel position is a totally different position with a different skill set. If his athleticism is more of a side to side, quick twitch athleticism, he might find more success. And I mean, that's what we're hearing and seeing from camp.
Oh, look at this Nickelback. Every time I do, it makes me laugh. That was my Nickelback. To AB's point on Jarian Jones, and I totally understand why Chris Nee and why listeners and viewers right now would be skeptical. You've seen 2 years of not good cornerback play from him. Totally warranted to want to see it before you buy it. I will counter that with, and this isn't me saying that I'm assuring that he's going to have a good season or even that he's going to start, just that he's positioned himself to be in that conversation. We've seen in the last year with this program that players get better. Not all of them, but there has been legitimate growth. We've talked about it how much on this show, guys, with Jordan Travis, but other spots as well. Linebacker with Kalen DeLoach figuring it out. Even Kevin Knowles in the course of the season, Amarian Cooper being developed and being a guy you were able to plug into the starting lineup late in the year over Jerry Jones. Like, guys get better. So I have learned to not totally write players off, even though I've been tempted to. It's still something I have to fight from years of covering this program and seeing players regress. Like, I will always have to remind myself and try to remind people listening, players can develop, can get better. Just what you saw last year doesn't mean it's going to be the exact same moving forward. There's actual progress happening within the program.
Mm-hmm.
Jerry Jones may be an example of that, maybe.
And he's playing a different position, potentially.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, you got to keep that in mind, right?
All right. Well, let's keep it rolling here. We're talking about progress. One guy that I think everybody, I don't know if everybody's surprised to hear about, but, maybe a little bit earlier than we thought we were going to hear about him is Deuce Spann.
Yeah.
I mean, Coach Norvell literally called him out first. It was the first name he brought up yesterday.
First name. Yep.
And it's not the first time he's mentioned him and his progress. And you've brought him up on Knowles 24/7 about how he's developing and maybe his timeline has been sped up some. What do you got on Deuce? This
is another example of progress, like, and seeing it in real time, because when I saw him in spring practice, I'm not sure if Kev, if you experienced this similarly, you see the length and you see the deep speed. You're like, oh, that's impressive. Yep. And then you see him try to run a route that's not a 9 pattern. And right. Like it looked a little clunky, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to describe it. Yeah, his routes aren't crisp. They weren't in the spring. You could tell that he was a recent convert to the position. But I think everybody in the spring, and even if you talk to Illinois people, they'll tell you that he stands out in terms of athleticism.
There are physical tools, and to me in the spring was a matter of like, okay, can you harness them for the upcoming season? And at that point, I was like, I just don't think like the trade-off is worth it. Like if he can only do one thing, and even then, like winning 50-50 balls and being having good concentration downfield, like even then I was like, okay, so he's fast, he could take a top off the defense, but how much do you really have to respect him other than him just being fast if he's not able to go and be aggressive catching the ball and be consistent, right, or if he can do anything else? Then I saw him in the beginning of camp, and the first day I was like, I'm not sure. And then he figured it out. I don't know what it was, but I heard good things about him in the summer. And since after the first day, like he's done something special pretty consistently. He doesn't do it a ton in practice. It's not like dominant. I want to couch it with that. Like he's not dominating. But he does do something once or twice in practice where you say, oh, that looks different than anything else that's on the roster. And it's the deep speed that we mentioned. It's the size and the length. But also he's starting to be a little bit more consistent, I guess, as a route runner. It doesn't mean he's always looking natural at it, but there's things he's doing now that he was not able to do with a route running perspective back in the spring. And that's encouraging. And then finally, in what we heard yesterday out of the scrimmage was that he was making plays across the field, different levels of the field, including a really nice deep pass that he was able to bring in traffic. So yeah, there's reason to be optimistic about the way he's trending.
And I kind of want to preface this, and this is not a fair comparison to anybody, but if you look at, I think Mike Norvell's a smart enough guy to look at other coaches and their success. If you look at what Bill Belichick did with his offense in the past, he's a defensive guy. He's not going to spend a lot of his cap space on offense. So what he did was he really found guys that could fit very specific roles, right? You've got your Wes Welker role. You've got your outside threat role. You've got your tight end. And you really find the guys that can do one thing specifically really well, and you can use those tools interchangeably. And that's something you have to do if you're not recruiting at the top level. You can't just get the guys that are better than everybody at everything. So yeah, I think Deuce Spann fits that mold of someone that has one specific skill set that you can use. And you just have to be really creative offensively trying to get them involved, and it'll be interesting to see how they do that.
Kev, let's talk about why it's important while Brendan shows his book.
It's Moneyball. Are you guys familiar with the
Absolutely.
book Moneyball?
I've seen
so let's talk about why it's important to have a player like Deuce Spann, though, what it does to the offense. Because, I mean, that's why people are here. They're here to learn a little bit of football. While we talk about what's going on, Deuce is known for the 9 route. I mean, that's what his bread and butter is going to be. I think we could all agree with that.
Yes.
The 9 route being a vertical route.
Yeah, being a vertical go route, a clear route. If you've got him on a clear, it forces a defense to have to account with a safety. And if the safety is having to account for him over the top, I don't know if you want to put the chalkboard up there, Kev.
Yeah, I'm getting it set up.
He's working on it. Stall for him.
If a safety is having to account for Deuce over the top, that's one less player that's having to come down in the box. This is a running football team. It's going to be a running football team as long as Mike Norvell's head coach. It's certainly going to be a running football team as long as Alex Atkins is offensive coordinator along with Mike Norvell as the head football coach. Hello.
Whoa, Kev.
Yeah, weird
what
things
are
are
going on
happening
there. So it's important. It's important that you bring in a guy who can get deep and get vertical and force a safety out of the box and to play coverage. For so many years now, or for the last 2 years now, we've seen teams be able to just put 8 guys in the box and not have to worry about anybody getting down the field. If this offense could play with 6 guys in the box, hell, 7 guys in the box, I think you find a little more consistent success. And if they can be more successful on first and second down, they're going to be more successful on third down, which means they're only going to be able to do better over the course of the season. So people are probably sitting thinking, why is Deuce, they're excited that Deuce Span's, developing and understand that it's important, but the really the why behind his importance is, I think, it's a big deal.
Yeah, here we go.
You can justify putting him on.
Working.
Is it working, Kev?
Yeah, you're right, Brendan. You can justify putting him on the field, because of what he can do.
Sorry about the technical difficulties over here, but you're totally right. We're just gonna pretend like this is a podcast for a second, which it is. So, he takes the safeties out of the box, right? The way that people shut down Jordan Travis is cheating a safety in the box, or if you're Pitt and running cover 4, you're going to cheat both safeties in the box, and hopefully you can take advantage of that, right? You force him out of that.
And Mike hasn't really had. I think it's fair to say Mike hasn't really had that presence in his 2 seasons at Florida State. Tamorrion Terry was supposed to be that. He wasn't 100%. Other than that one game against Notre Dame where he went beast mode, he just wasn't himself and got moved off the team. But he hasn't had, and that was something he always had at Memphis. Even if it wasn't his number 1 receiver, it was at least someone who could take the top off of defense and force you to respect the vertical presence. That's a big takeaway for me, is that Deuce Spann is doing enough in preseason camp to justify playing him this season and having him as that presence. I didn't think you could justify playing him. I didn't think the trade-off was worth it back in the spring. I've come around on that based on the development in the strides he's made in the last few months.
Well, you'll be happy to know that Tyler Barkley's very concerned about this boring-ass offense. So we'll see. We'll see what it turns into. We'll see if it gets him excited this year or not.
Come on, Tyler.
That's so funny hearing that, because everybody else you hear on YouTube is complaining that don't run the ball 100% of the time, and that we've got that newfangled RPO system that doesn't work, while Ole Miss is running through the SEC with below average recruits.
And the RPO treated Mike Norvell pretty well at Memphis when he had pieces in place.
It did.
So
his offenses have gotten worse since he's used less RPO, actually. Yeah. So
don't you use your fancy schmancy stats?
We'll see. We'll see about all that.
That's here.
So
we know the defensive line is going to be a strength for this team. I think the other area to kind of talk about here is the offensive line. I think it's important to preface this conversation by saying that Mike Norvell did admit that they didn't have all their pieces yesterday for the scrimmage. We're obviously not going to discuss what pieces were not there or what pieces were there, but did you get any feedback on the O-line?
Yes, I heard that the lack of availability along the offensive line, specifically the first team offensive line, made it difficult for the first team offense to operate at times, especially early on in the scrimmage. I think it's also reasonable to assume that early on in the scrimmage was when Robert Cooper and Fabian Lovett would have been getting their most action because they were on a snap count, which is pretty standard for those 2 guys because, as you noted, Coach AB, FSU knows what it has with those 2. So anyways, Robert Cooper and Fabian Lovett versus an injury-plagued offensive line is how we will phrase it for
No
now,
bueno.
because it's not a great look. Some of the people who explains to on the message board were like, "Oh, this offensive line won't be able to handle starting defensive line." Well, first off, the two defensive tackles that they would be going against, the ones are better than probably 90% of the defensive tackles you'd be facing in college football. That's one. Point two is I don't know who is. I can't say who is inside, who was starting, who wasn't. I don't want to get into that. I probably should stop rambling now before I get myself in any trouble. But I will say the encouraging thing was the offense did eventually find a way. And as it settled in, the ones, the twos, the threes, all were able to make some segments of semblance of plays. This wasn't just it was a dominant effort by the defense early on, and I think it controlled the majority of the scrimmage. But there was enough counters by the offense to make you think, hey, we can figure some things out throughout the course of a quote unquote game when we are outmanned, which a year ago, if you were missing multiple starting offensive linemen, you were DOA, right? That was it. You just weren't getting anything done. And you weren't even getting anything done in practice. The second and third team offensive line were non-existent. We're full of walk-ons. That at least is no longer the case. If you can snap the ball consistently, I think you can do things well enough with multiple units of the offensive line. And I can. Did that make sense?
It did until the end there when you
Yeah.
started breaking up.
Oh, well, sure, why not?
So AB, you've become the offensive line, the name and all things offensive line at Florida State over the past couple of years. Well, at least in my opinion. So, how are you feeling about this unit going forward? Is this? I know the famous phrase of kind of you. We had a timeline of going from way below average to below average to average. Where would you say they are on that scale, just based off what you've heard in camp so far?
I still don't know if it can be defined. I mean, I've heard good things when even down into when a Bryson Estes gets on the field, whether that be first team, second team, whenever he's playing. I've heard a lot of positive stuff, but I do still think, some feedback I got from a couple people, not named Brendan and others from those 24/7 that have been at practices, like the first day in pads, the interior of the offensive line did not do great, against this starting front. I don't think you would expect them to on day one in pads. You've got a player like just a Dimitri Emanuel or Bryson Estes. These are guys that don't have a lot of time communicating with all the guys around them, and communication is king on the offensive line. This is a front that can get off the ball. They do a lot of movement. So I think right now it's just undefined for this group up front. And I know people are going to maybe hear what Brendan was talking about, that, that they got beat, or hear me say that they struggled on the first day in pads. I don't want that to be a panic point, because as I'm trying to note here, cry harder. There's some real treats in the chat tonight. As I'm trying to note here, it's important to remember that communication for the front is absolute king. It's going to take a while, really up into that Duquesne game, for these guys to get it. Remember what we thought about Dylan Gibbons last year. It was a struggle bus for him for a while. And then he kind of figured it out. He got comfortable with the offense. He got comfortable with the guys around him. And then he became Florida State's best offensive lineman last year. I'm not saying that Dimitri Emanuel or Bless Harris or Bryson Estes or these guys are going to become that. But I think it's just going to continue to take time. They're going to continue to get more comfortable as a group, and we're going to see them get better. Do I expect them to be an above average group this year? No. I expect them to kind of be in that average range, which is a really far step from where they've been, right? And I think that they can live in that average range, even if your sixth man comes off the bench or your seventh man comes off the bench. I think you can still kind of live in that ballpark. I think that there's 9 or 10 guys that could probably come into play. I think when you start talking about getting down to that 9th and 10th, that the drop-off is going to be a little bit more steep. But you probably, and Brendan, correct me if I'm wrong, you probably trust that 9th or 10th guy. I'm just going to say a name, Justin Turnitine. I don't know where he is on the depth chart, but he might be that 10th guy. I think you would trust him to come in and play right now with some drop off. Whereas in years past, the drop off would have been absolutely, it would have just, you were screwed.
The 10th player this year on the offensive line is probably akin to like the 7th last season.
Right.
Just to kind of give you an example of the improved depth.
So you're saying we're building our offensive line like Leonard Hamilton builds a basketball team.
The new ACC, as Leonard Hamilton would say, the new ACC.
The top 10 we might not have the best top 5, but our top 10 can all play and kind of be out there. So
I don't think people understand how big of a step that is.
It's huge.
Any consistency, any ability to move people when you're down in the red zone. This was a god awful running game, and I think that I don't know what the stats were for him last year, but when it came to needing to move somebody on a 4th down situation or down inside the red zone, they really struggle with it. I think that they've brought in guys that they feel like they can do that with now. I see somebody asking about Julian Armella. There's a player right there that has been discussed already through this preseason, who is, he's a ways away because he's a true freshman. He didn't get here until the beginning of summer, but as a guy that's flashing already, a big win in one-on-ones against Jared Verse. I believe he got some extended reps yesterday in the scrimmage, and from what I understand, did all right. So there's
you hit on Julian Armella. I think it's the best. Like, I don't know if that means he's going to be someone you rely on this year. He might end up developing into that, but he's not. You're not going to recruit over him. I'll put it that way. I think he'll be a factor for the next few years, which is awesome to know that this early on in someone's career.
So I kind of want to throw it to Zach because we hear a lot from Brendan about FSU's practices. He's doing all the immediate thoughts. Zach, do you have someone that you've seen at practice, that you've seen in these scrimmages, that maybe isn't getting talked about enough from our boy Brendan, who's controlling the narratives with his?
I'm spinning the narratives too, according to
fit his Wyatt Rector serving needs.
Oh boy.
Man, that's tough. There's a couple guys because we know one of the cornerback spots is probably man down by Duke Cooper, right? You go to the opposite side, and I think it's a race between a couple guys, and I think those guys have had solid camps. Like Greedy Vance is a guy that I think is he's in play to be a guy at that spot. I don't know if he'll be the starter or second string. Right now, I'd probably project Duda. Renardo Green as the guy at that spot. I think he's had a really good camp quietly. He had an amazing spring. I think we noted that extensively on Noles 24/7. I think he's been a little bit less consistently impressive every day in fall camp, but I've still liked what he's done. And he's probably a guy that I think that we can note because I think he has a really good shot at manning down that other spot at the cornerback position.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that's important to know. I think Greedy Vance kind of got slept on when he was brought in. Not a guy that got a lot of love when he came over in the transfer portal. And when I was watching practice, I thought he looked like a guy that was a solid presence in the cornerback room, and someone that we have guys that know as much about playing cornerback as anybody. Talking to us about that room, and there's a group of guys that I think you're kind of wary of because it's a lot of unknowns, but it's been nothing but good. So I've seen a lot of stuff talking about centers. What are y'all's feelings on centers? I know we really can't dive too deep into the depth chart, but what are the pros and cons of each of the guys, and ultimately who do you think is going to get more snaps by season's end? Maybe not necessarily starting day one, but who do you think Who do you think is going to be the guy game 12?
Ooh, that's a tough question.
Yeah,
Toughie.
it is. If you had asked that at the beginning of camp, I would have said Caden Lyles, no doubt. Even though we saw it in the spring game, like Murray Smith was with the ones and Caden Lyles was largely with the twos. But I thought the plan was for Caden Lyles to be the starting center at the beginning of the season. Murray Smith, to his credit, put on weight. I think he was at 270 in the spring. He's at 288 at the beginning of camp. So he was able to put on weight, which has been one of his biggest hangups, is that he would just continually be. Oh boy, the side chat is really distracted. Sorry for the podcast listeners. But so he adds weight, which has really been the big thing holding Murray Smith back. We've seen that the last couple of years, whether it's injuries leading to weight loss or weight loss leading to more injuries, but he's just someone who struggled to hold his own in the trenches. I think that element has been more or less fixed in preseason camp. He's held up well physically. There's been multiple times where he's been lined up with Robert Cooper, who's 335 pounds one-on-one, and has not just held his own, but won that rep and won it pretty convincingly, where he's able to anchor down and kind of dictate the terms of that one-on-one matchup. So if I think Murray Smith, and this is what they ultimately wanted, was for Caden Lyles to push Murray Smith and to maybe, like, if Caden wasn't someone who was living up to his potential in the season, to be able to turn to Murray Smith, who would be a little rejuvenated, wouldn't have a bunch of reps to him, and hopefully have a little bit more experience at that point to play middle of the season. At this point, I'd go with Murray Smith as a starter because I think he's performed well enough in preseason camp to justify that spot.
Yeah, I think that,
likey.
Yeah, AB, give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, first, I think it's out there. So Brendan, slap me if I'm wrong, but Darius is working back from some things, correct? I mean, that's,
Mike has said that. Mike Gravel said that. I think that's a good way to put that. Yeah,
again, I don't want to get us in trouble, but yeah, I think I've been one that's advocated for Darius Washington working at center. I don't think it's probably something we're going to see, knowing that you have two pretty experienced players already allocated for that position. I'd still love to see it down the road because I do think Darius has got. I think he's built for that spot, but that's neither here nor there. I think Maurice just fits what you want to do. We've long talked. I haven't been out there. I don't know what they're running in practice. I hope I'm not giving away any trade secrets because I haven't seen any of it. This is an offense that we talked about a lot in this offseason. That was built around outside zone, counter. Those are things that I think they want to be staples of their foundation plays. They haven't done that here yet. I don't think you can do that with a Caden Lyles, though. He's shown that he's so slow-footed that I'm not sure he can reach a 3-tech. I'm not certain that he can, overtake a guy, overtake on a bucket step on an outside zone play. I don't think you could put him at guard and pull him. We know his strength is head up, mauling people. Whereas I feel like Maurice Smith, with some of the added weight that we know that he's put on, he is built to do those things. His athleticism is absolutely, his greatest strength at the center position. So for a team that wants to run the ball, and I believe a team that wants to run the ball horizontally more than they do vertically, I think it makes sense to have a Maurice Smith in there. But he's got to prove he can do it. And if he can't, I do feel confident that Caden can come in there. They can make some tweaks to fit his strengths better. I'm cool with Maurice. My biggest concern is on these with the tackles. It's not with the center job. I know people have been very worried about that spot. I'm more concerned with, can Bless Harris hold up over on the right side? Can Robert Scott stop a speed rush on the left side? Those things I think are going to play a bigger factor in this season than what happens at center.
I think you put that excellently, and there's one comment that I want to address personally before someone else jumps on it, and it's something near and dear to my heart. Tate Rodemaker.
Oh God!
So Tate Rodemaker is a guy that that I've been high on since day one. He makes all the throws that you can ask for. If you're listening to people that are just now telling you that he looks dominant in practice,
dominant.
That that he looks good in practice. Dominant is a little bit of an extreme word. That would be like
I heard
implying
it's
that.
a quarterback. I heard it's a quarterback competition.
Yeah, if they're just now saying that he looks good in practice, then that should be a concern. But he can make all the throws across the field. There's a reason that this staff holds on to him. There's a reason that he's still on this quarterback room. There's a reason
Kevin
that he's around, but he's not going to press Jordan Travis at any point in time for a starting position. AB thinks he's the worst. So I don't. There was someone. He was just never better than Chuba. That once told me he was the worst quarterback Florida State has had on a roster ever. Worst quarterback ever.
I said that. Did I say that?
No, it was someone that worked for a previous outlet.
I never said that. He just was never better than Chuba.
Yeah, he was still better than Chuba.
No, he as someone who was there practices last year, he was definitely not better than. I know you didn't love Chuba. He was not better than Chuba last year.
This is great. I don't know if this is a Logan that I know, but this is just a great comment.
Brendan, is there a quarterback battle?
There's no quarterback battle. But if I can provide some nuance in a world that does not like nuance, does not like gray area, Tate Rodemaker has gotten better. And he's gotten better. And he started at I know, right? He now
traitor.
For context, he started very, very, very low point. Some of that not his fault. He was not put in a great spot early in his career. That 2020 season was just an abomination for a lot of reasons. It was a bastardization of a football season for Florida State, and a lot of that was not in the control of the coaching staff, and then it trickles down to that wasn't the control of a true freshman quarterback like Tate Rodemaker. That being said, he has not performed well when the lights have been on, and
he was a whole 1 for 2 last season.
Yeah, well, he didn't throw any interceptions, so that was progress from what
he did throw an offensive pass interference, however that works.
Well, that is a pretty impressive thing to do with a small sample size. He did look better in the spring, and he's had some really good moments in camp. He's also had some moments where he hasn't been very good, and I think that's kind of the thing with Tate that we go back to Jerry and Jones talking about earlier. Do you believe it until you see it, or do you in live action, or can you kind of take some of the little glimpses here and there in practice and buy into it? I will say this. He does have, and Kev said it earlier, he has the ability to make all the throws. Yes, that does exist. Going back to Moneyball, just because you've seen it once does not mean it's something that you can do over and over and over again. And that's what talent evaluators get in trouble with a lot of times, because you've seen it happen once or twice. You think you can harness it all the time. Some of that I think is ego for coaches and pro teams that do that. But with Tate, it's a matter of can he bring it consistently without having the catastrophic play. Last week at practice was a great example of it, where he orchestrated just an amazing drive. He was pushing the ball downfield. He was hitting different spots. It ends with a touchdown pass to Nicholson Douglas in the end zone. That's just a perfect 30-yard. I don't want to say what pattern it was, but 30 yards downfield, Nicholson Douglas, where it was just put nicely. Don't shake your head, Zachary. We're all good. We're kosher right now.
Wait, the next drive, Douglas made it 30 yards downfield.
Guys are allowed to get better. I don't know why I have to keep saying this.
That means
how dare you diss Biscuit?
It means he had some protection.
Is he a limp biscuit, or is he?
Whoa, kids show. Don't Google it. Don't Google it.
This is a show for children.
Anyway, so next, back on track. Back on track. So Tate Rodemaker's next drive was Brett Nevitz sitting next to me, and he tries to throw the ball middle of the field and puts it about 2 or 3 yards behind Johnny Wilson right into Travis Jay's hands. If Johnny Wilson doesn't make a play back to kind of swat it and knock it down, which is actually a really good play by Johnny, it would have been an interception. Brett goes, that might have been the worst pass we've seen from anyone in preseason camp. And he was right. It was a timing pass. It was about rhythm, and just couldn't replicate it. And it was almost a catastrophic play. For Tate, that's the next step. And we got to see whether he can, two parts of the next step. One, to be more consistent. Two, to channel the good moments in games in live action. And that's kind of TBD for me. But no, Kev, no quarterback battle right now.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Especially since you're still working with a wide receiver group that has a lot of question marks on it. An offensive line that we're projecting to be average. That's kind of the recipe for an offense that probably will function best with a quarterback that's able to be dynamic and kind of stress the defense in other ways besides requiring your wide receivers to get open.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely the Jade Trav effect, which we've talked about so much on the show, like is a real deal. Hey, can I say real quick? Zach went away for a week, and AJ Duffy became a legitimate quarterback.
Became a legitimate quarterback.
The first, Zach, you were there.
Breaking news.
Without the context of reading my practice reports when you were out of town, like how did you, when you left for Destin, Florida, what did you think of AJ Duffy?
He did not look like a quarterback that was as highly recruited as he was out of high school that first week. I'll say that it's really encouraging to hear like your practice reports when I was kind of getting out from that vacation, like just reading them. It was good to hear that he had improved, but that first week was rough for him for sure. I mean, I think like anyone that says otherwise just wasn't watching. Like it was not good. He wasn't able to process things. He was too quick to tuck it and run a lot of times. I mean, we were kind of betting between me, you, Dane, I guess, just whether he tuck it and run like on every play. It was not good, but I think the game started to slow down for him. I mean, you could talk about it more. You were there in person, but that's kind of what I got from reading your reports.
Yeah, there was like a legitimate like 40% proposition that he was probably going to tuck and run in live 11-on-11 drills like early on in camp, and it was cool to see how it kind of all clicked for him. It was an off-platform throw where he got flushed out of the pocket, was rolling to his right, and just had to make a difficult throw downfield. There was pressure coming, had to kind of change up his arm slot because of the way the pressure was coming. And delivered, like, just kind of flicked the wrist, got it 30 yards, 40 yards downfield, right on the money. I think it was I can't remember the wide receiver who caught it off the top of my head, but it was just a really good throw to give his guy. Oh, it was Brian Courtney who made the catch, who's had some moments here in camp. So it was a really good throw, very athletic catch by Brian Courtney. But after that, you saw AJ kind of settle in and be like, I can physically do it at this level. Now, there's still a lot of lows for him, still a lot of times where you can tell he's processing things. I think he's the one who threw the interception, right? In scrimmage yesterday to I was going to say Azaria Thomas to Sam McCall. Wrong freshman corner, sorry. But the fact that he's improving, again, like consistent theme of this podcast and I think of covering this team is like there are consistently signs of progress and growth, and that's really cool to see in live time.
Yeah, I think that's always going to be the biggest question with freshman quarterbacks, especially someone we pointed this out in his film. He's makes a lot of one reads and throws the ball. He showed that he could throw the ball over the middle, and he has a decent arm, and he definitely is an athlete. But it's good. It's an encouraging sign to hear that he's making a few more reads and not just tucking, because even in spring that was a big concern.
Let's get a couple chat questions, and then we're going to get out of here because we're pushing an hour 10. One question I had though before we get to these guys, and just real quick, any concerns that you didn't hear AZ Thomas's name come out yesterday?
No. I mean, he was mentioned, he was asked about, but he was apparently played fine. I mean, we saw this in the spring too, that Azaria had like some really great, like couple practices in a row and then was kind of quiet for a few days. And he's never been picked on. I don't think he's going to be someone who's going to be picked on, but this was something that happened in the spring too. And for him to be like, to expect that he's going to have multiple turnovers every single day just isn't realistic. He's positioned himself to play as a true freshman. He probably will play as a true freshman. I don't think the expectation realistically was for him to start from day one. I would still put pretty good money that he will start or play starting caliber snaps by the end of the season.
Yeah, more of an Amarian Cooper type.
Yep. I'm shaking my head for those listening, nodding my head adamantly. Yes, that's a really good analogy, Kev. Yeah.
All right, we got a question from Ryan. Are the receivers getting separation? If not, what needs to improve more, athleticism or technique?
It's hit or miss. I know it's not me stuttering, stammering is not great for listening. It is hit or miss day to day is the best way I can describe it. And there are some days when the wide receivers go off where they are running crisp routes, and when they are covered, they're making these tough 50-50 catches. And then there's other days where they just look pretty locked up and struggle to consistently catch the ball. And that the bad days have been less frequent than last year, but there are still some days where just the passing game isn't isn't a strength for the offense. And I think that's probably going to be reflective of the season where you're going to have some really good days through the air, which you didn't have much of last year. And I think there's going to be days where it's going to look a lot like last season as well. I think ultimately, like, yeah, we can talk about technique and we can talk about coaching and whatnot. I think the caliber of athlete at wide receiver still has to get better. They've made strides in improving it. It was one of the worst wide receiving units in Power 5 last year. It's still probably a below average one, but at least you have guys now, Kev alluded to earlier, again, another Moneyball thing, platoon approach. You have guys who can do multiple or one or two things well instead of someone who's like great at a few multiple, different things. So you at least have that. But yeah, the athleticism in the wide receiver room is, to me, still pretty mundane, pretty pedestrian.
And this is kind of old news, but when Micah Pittman came in the spring, he ran the best routes out of anybody on Florida State's roster, and it was not particularly close.
I thought it was good, Kev, that we heard his name from the scrimmage yesterday because he struggled some earlier in camp, and that was not like him dropping the ball. Like, one thing to maybe not get open or to not have a standout day, but him putting the ball on the ground was not that was not his norm based on what we saw in the spring. So for him to have turned it around from there and put together some good days, and then to be someone they can rely on and that Jordan Travis can rely on in games like that, that's good because you need someone, even though they're not a true quote unquote one, someone that you can rely on to get open and know where they're going to be and know that they're going to have a chance to make a play when you get them the ball.
Yeah. Zach, Byerson. Yes, we are doing Byerson.
Wow, copycats. That's on the bench is sending some lawsuits over your way right now.
I mean, to be fair, this is on the bench podcast network.
I actually threw that
I
in
am
there
the
as a
shifter
shout-out
of
to Brendan.
narratives.
You know what? Never mind.
Whoa.
I am undoing the Byerson.
No, go back to Byerson. You can't do that. Look at Zach's devastated.
Trey Benson, Byerson.
Bye.
I
think a better question right now is, we got a poll going on in the chat. It's currently one vote in 1% or 2% actually in favor of no on whether should Brendan bring back the tank top.
So wait, it's yes. It's
right now it's tied up. 107 votes.
No.
How's that even possible? What?
Wait, what's happening? I don't understand what's happening. Do people want the tank top or not?
It's 50-50 right now.
Oh wow, it's neck and neck.
Ooh,
really
it's a barn burner.
It's arm in arm.
Go put your votes in.
God.
All right, what's the next question,
Right,
AB?
yeah. Zach, what about Hakeem Williams? He announced a new timeline. Give us a brief, quick rundown on that, if you can.
Yeah, so it looks like he's going to be deciding likely at the end of September. He told Andrew Ivins of 24/7 Sports that I think he's visiting Pitt for one of their opening games, and I believe either A&M or Georgia. I'll have to read it back again, but he set two unofficials, I believe, for that first month of college football. It's interesting. Like, Brendan can chime in here too because he's well informed on this recruitment. But I think that Florida State actually has a shot here, surprisingly. He's a 5-star wide receiver that FSU's been recruiting for quite some time. His teammate, his former teammate at Stranahan High School down in South Florida, is on FSU's roster. They're really good friends. Omar Graham Jr., true freshman linebacker. He spent 4 days in Tallahassee to close out the month of July. There was a 1-week period where recruits could go anywhere. And he chose to go to FSU for more than half that week. So that was huge. And Ivins reported that FSU or people close to him are noting that FSU visit as a noteworthy one, and that FSU made a real great move with Hakeem. I think Texas A&M is still viewed as the top threat in his recruitment. Miami's involved. Pitt, like I mentioned before, is involved. He has a really good relationship with one of their receiver coach, I think, Taekwon Underwood. He was at Rutgers before, and he got him on campus a bunch at Rutgers, surprisingly. And then Georgia is another school that you can't discount in that one. So it'll be a tough, battle to win. But I think FSU has a shot, and especially if they start the 2022 season strong.
All right, I love it. That's what we need. That's what they need. They need a player like Hakeem Williams. Brendan, special teams, thumbs up, thumbs down. We're going to rapid fire these.
Uh,
Thumbs down.
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 Why?
Okay.
Thumbs down.
So for those of you listening, thumbs down from Brendan.
Sorry, guys. Yeah, my bad.
What a
Thumbs
great
down.
podcaster.
Ooh,
Yeah.
woof.
Oof. Sorry, you put the camera in front of me and I freeze up. I don't have a whole lot of faith in the kicking game right now, which is a big part of it. I am curious to see what the return game looks like this season. I think they do have better caliber athlete returning the ball, which should be helpful. But I guess this was one of the things you can put me in the need to see it to believe it camp. A Chris knee joint.
Tight end's the most concerning group of the whole team.
Yes, bye.
Ooh, I like it. Do we trust Renardo, whatever Zach called him as a nickname earlier?
Day, what was it?
Duda.
Duda. Do we trust Duda at cornerback?
I do.
Ooh, I like that. Okay. How good do you think the D-line can be?
Good. You have two really high-end defensive tackles. Jared Verse is really athletic, still somewhat raw, but getting better. Dennis Briggs looks pretty damn good in camp. So if you get some rush end speed between Derek McClendon and Jared Verse, I think you'll be solid this year. I think it's an above-average defensive line with potential to be quite good if you find someone who can generate pressure off the edge.
I think this is one that everybody's going to really want to hear an answer to. Over or under Winston Wright playing by game 6?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's so funny because like his camp was really optimistic that he would play day one. I'm confident that will not happen at this point. Game 6, that's tough. It's just because there's so many elements of like with the injury and the way the injury happened. Like I don't want to say that I don't think the kid is not gonna be able to play the season. Just it'd be a really great. I'll put it this way: it'll be a really great story if he is able to play middle of the year and give you high quality snaps. He's working really hard to do that. Maybe that's the best way I can put it.
Well, Brennan, you reported after the scrimmage that there were no major injuries, and so that implied to me that Winston Wright was healthy, right?
Well, no injuries occurred in the scrimmage. Please don't give the message boarders fodder for reading in between the lines incorrectly. They do enough of that as it is.
All right, what's next, AB?
That's it. That's all we're going to touch on tonight. There's a lot of folks worried about quarterback recruiting. Maybe Zach will. I don't know. Maybe we'll get Zach on solo to just talk quarterback recruiting because it's such a hot topic. I don't know.
That's Sinone's baby, though.
Oh,
quarterback recruiting? The crystal ball?
Yeah, somehow I've fallen into I got a couple weird niches covering recruiting. I guess quarterback's one of them.
All right. Well, that's going to be it for us tonight. We're at 1 hour and 17 minutes. This is going to be up on the Brendan. What is it called? What is it officially called?
On the Bench, an FSU football podcast network. But when we talk about it, we'll just say On the Bench podcast network.
Okay. So make sure you get on the On the Bench podcast network tomorrow. This is going to be up a replay. This will be up on YouTube. Please be sure before you leave. I'm not answering Dustin Hill questions, Pete. Before you leave, make sure you have smashed the like button. Yeah, Dustin Hill ain't happening, boys. I mean, and girls and ladies and women and men and all the others.
It would seem highly, highly unlikely at this point, given that they allocated their last scholarship to Malik Feaster.
I would move on. I would move on from that dream. We all love it, but it is what it is. Be sure to hit the like button. If you're not subscribed, subscribe here. Subscribe at X's and Knowles. Get over and subscribe at Knowles 24/7. Do all the great things.
Hit the ring so you don't miss this.
Yeah. Hit the little bell. Get the notifications. Noti gang. Everybody talks about notification gang. Get in there. Ding, ding, ding. All right. And lastly, what's coming up this week, Brendan, before we get out of here?
Practice returns tomorrow on Monday, Tuesday, then Wednesday and Thursday, Zach. They'll be in Jacksonville, or is it Thursday and Friday? They'll be in Jacksonville. They're going to UNF for a couple days.
Thursday and Friday.
And Friday.
It's Wednesday and Thursday.
So I was right the first time. Thanks. Yeah. Good job. Dynamite there. And then they will have a second and I believe final scrimmage of the preseason on Saturday. So we got that going on. There's currently a 50% off promo at Knowles 24/7. It was 60%. You lost 10% and you snooze, you lose, but there's 50% ongoing. It's company-wide for different websites. So we have that going on. I think that's everything right now. Right, Zach? Maybe some as commitment watch for a few players this week or next week. It's this week.
Yeah, this upcoming week, I'd be on the lookout. Tavion Gadsden should be making a decision within the next few days. I think by the end of this coming weekend, I expect him to be committed to a school. FSU is the current 24/7 Sports Crystal Ball leader for him. And then Blake Nicholson is another guy that I think could make a decision soon. He has not set a commitment date yet, but I think that could get set up in the near future.
Okay. All right. You heard it. We're out. Sam Singleton's mom, we do like him as a player. We're sorry. We didn't mean to,
I think she's long gone. So
we didn't mean to make anybody upset tonight.
Oh
Good
boy.
Um,
Oh boy.
If you're catching this after the fact, try to make it to the stream. We try to answer questions and have a good time on here. Those of you who showed up, thanks. We had 300 in here at one point in time, so that was a good time, fun time, active chat. So catch us next time as we come back and do this again, and we'll see you soon.